ladies and gentlemen. Let's take that up with our live guest. So joining us now, we're joined by Naveen Soni. He's an auto industry expert and former president Lexus as well. Along with him is C.K. Jain, the president of Grain Ethanol Manufacturers Association. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on ET. Now, first to you, Mr. Soni. The government has warned of strict action against fuel adulteration. It was also stated that the number of cases related to adulteration remain very limited. But does this essentially align with what the auto industry is seeing?
Yeah, sure. This comes as a big, how should I say, relief to the auto industry, basically because the fuel contamination was being or had to be tackled primarily because after the blending program has been put in place, there were thoughts and there were also rumors floating around that when the vehicles which were reported in the workshops, etc., had different kind of fuels which could be backtracked to obviously to the bunks only where this fuel was supplied. So the assurance that has been given by the ministry, we already know that there is a lot of checks and balances that have been put in place up till now, and the oil marketing companies are very concerned about such kind of things. They have put in place density measurement tools. They have put in place water ingress tools. They have now put in place input-output tools which measure actually what is the fuel that has been taken from the bunk to avoid any, how should I say, pilferage and mixing. I'm also told that they have put in place geofencing of even the trucks that are coming to these bunks, and triggers like OTPs, etc., can open those e-locks when fuel can be supplied. All in all, very reassuring that that only 2 such cases have been reported. However, I think continuous monitoring in a large country like India is paramount.
Absolutely, and we'll come to that point essentially about how India is a very large country, the third largest auto market in the world. That's fast progressing. So hold on to that thought. Mr. Soni, let me come to you, Mr. Jain. Does the ethanol industry believe that the current testing regime is sufficient because India is transitioning to a newer regime as far as energy is concerned?
Yeah, namaskar, and thank you for calling me here. You see, presently also, the OMCs are very strict in accepting the quality of ethanol which we supply. And they are very much strict on the quality. They are very much strict on they have put in sufficient benchmarks, sufficient things to avoid any contamination as far as distillery is concerned. First, we check at our laboratory. Then when delivered to OMC, they also check. And they have got very stringent parameters, and we maintain that. If for example, if any of the tanker it is not maintained, tanker is rejected by the depot. So supply chain from ethanol distillery to OMC and OMC to onwards is perfect. Further checks are required, no doubt. It is always a scope of improvement further. There is always a scope because we are proceeding for higher blends. So we need more better ethanol, no doubt about it. So further checks are required, and for which the industry is ready, OMC is ready, everything is ready. The problem
right, Mr. Jain.
Problem comes.
Right,
problem comes at the retail
Right,
end.
Mr. Jain. So let me ask you a follow-up question, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Soni. How did these cases really come about if there is proper testing happening? In fact, the government has also stated that only 2 cases of chloride contamination have been found. How did those cases come about? Does India not have stringent testing methods, and are we not yet ready to transition to E20 and, higher blended fuels yet?
I have to reply?
Yes, Mr. Jain.
Yes, we are very much ready. Our quality control is very stringent. There is no room for any adulteration. There is no room of deviation. Nothing has to be done. But as I said, again, I'm saying there is always a scope of improvement. There is always a scope of, because we have to go for SAF. We have to go for aviation fuels. So there is always a scope of improvement. And so far, at present, our qualities are excellent, at par with the world, at par with everywhere. So when OMCs are quite strict on that quality. So rest assured from ethanol to
Right.
OMC is no problem.
Right, Mr. Jain, but the fact of the matter is that there are still some cases which are cropping up, and which is what is causing, concern in the minds of consumers, and that is something that needs to be addressed by OMCs, by the Government of India. Let me come to you, Mr. Soni. Mr. Soni, what kind of monitoring standards and additional safeguards are needed by OMCs to ensure that the consumer does not end up paying the price for this kind of transitioning, which is very much needed in today's day and age of energy insecurity, so that the consumer doesn't end up sort of paying the price, and he is comfortable, he or she is comfortable as far as this entire energy transition program of the government is concerned? What kind of standards are needed?
Yeah, I think so. What we have to consider is various tech-enabled supports. Basically, what I'm referring to is, when I talk to my friends in the oil marketing companies, they say that there are stringent methods that have been put in place. Having said that, yes, still, despite that, there are cases like this which have been reported. Now, this may not be coming from the source which Mr. Jain is talking about, ethanol to the fuel. There was only one possibility of water ingress, which I'm told 8 to 10 times is the new protocol that has been laid, where OMCs are checking at the bunk where these dispensations are happening. Having said that, if there could be a mechanism, and when I ask them, what happens in case there's water detection, because it is hydrous in nature, ethanol, so they say that they stop the bunk usage for a while, and then they take steps to kind of correct the situation. This is just one of the sources. As I said in my opening remarks, India is such a large country. We are talking about different geographies. We are talking about spread out geographies. So unless and until you have completely tech-enabled solutions which are actually detecting anything that goes wrong and puts in a check and balance into the system at that point of time, rather than wait for the end of the day to realize that there has been some adulteration that may have happened or occurred at the bunk, which is today's thrust that I see. So that would be helpful in terms of improving the how should I say, the consumer confidence. Yes, there is a lot of things that are floating in the market, and today's SIAM concern is further accentuating these kind of facts and figures that this could be related to fuel quality. Having said that, I think the oil ministry has come out in the open and said only two such cases. Yeah.
Right. Right, but will that assuage the concerns of consumers? That remains to be seen. But Mr. Soni, let me also ask you a follow-up question. Should fuel quality test results, should they be made public outlet-wise to sort of improve transparency? Because what is needed at this point in time is to enable trust amongst consumers, because we've seen some complaints with respect to E20 have come about. And what is needed at the moment, like I said, is transparency. So should fuel quality test results be made public?
I think, in a manner of speaking, if you go to any petrol bunk, you would find what is the kind of density that they are reporting. That was at the start of the day, and probably at the start of every day, they are supposed to prescribe those and put those on this public display. How to make this now? This is just pen and paper display. I could alter this as the day progressed. But as I said, if there was a kind of a tech-enabled support, where the bunk stops operation in case it detects any such adulteration, whether it is chlorine, whether it is sulfur, whether it is even water. So that would be the thing that would actually give consumer confidence, where such kind of fail-proof, foolproof, fail-proof checks that have been put in place, which would definitely assuage all consumer concerns.
Right. Let me ask Mr. Jain the final question, since we're completely timed out on this particular chat. Mr. Jain, what are the lessons that India can learn from countries like Brazil that have transitioned to cleaner fuels, and they have done it years ahead of us? And this is something that the Government of India representatives also speak about. So what are the kind of lessons that we can pick up from Brazil, especially when it comes to setting standards for E20 and other cleaner fuels?
Miss, I can tell you one thing. Entire Southeast Asia is praising the government of India's program of E20, which they achieved in 8 years' time. Against, it was achieved in 25 years in Brazil. Entire Southeast Asia, I had been visiting there, talking about them. So our program is perfect. In fact, we have to learn from Brazil is how to increase the blending percentage. For that, they have done that flexi fuel vehicles have been introduced. The base blending, which is 20 here right now, there it is now 30, E30. You cannot get less than, any petrol pump cannot dispense less than E30. And another is E100. So those are the lessons where we can reach to replacing 50 to 60% of petrol consumption by our locally produced ethanol. Now, as far as ethanol quality is concerned, there is, as I'm saying again and again, that there is always a scope of improving. Today, the quality specification, everything is in public domain. What distillery has to supply, what OMC has to take, it is in public domain. There is nothing hidden. There is no question of hidden. Everything is as per BIE standards. So we are going with that,
Right.
and there is no problem as far as supply chain is concerned.
Right,
Problem
Mr. Jain.
remains in some of the petrol pump, not all. Some of the rural area side petrol pump. So
Yes,
we
and
should
how
be
that
little patient.
mechanism,
We should be
Mr.
little
Jain, how
patient
that
on this.
mechanism can be made more robust is really the need of the hour. And we do hope that the government is looking into these concerns, a few concerns that have come up. But of course, a clarification from the government has come about as far as fuel quality standards are concerned. The government has, of course, assured consumers that there is no contamination whatsoever as far as fuel is concerned. However, there are one or two few cases that have come about. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much, Mr. Soni, Mr. Jain, for taking the time out and giving your perspectives on this big story. At the end of the day, it needs to really be explored, ladies and gentlemen, but there needs to be a standard compensation mechanism if an OMC's fuel is found to be contaminated. But on